So for electricity, we have, protection to stop, people getting electric shock. Similarly, for AI, we need to have a way to stop people believing in confabulation or hallucination.
Adri, thanks for coming in. It's our first time meeting. If you wouldn't mind, for the viewer base that we have, could you give us a bit of a high-level steer on just your background and experience and kind of how the world looks to you these days from a work perspective?
Yes. So I started my professional career as an entrepreneur. 13 years back, I was at uni with the idea that we need to record university lectures and sell it to people who can't come to university. To solve that problem, I was looking into recording professors autonomously using, I didn't know machine learning then. So it was pan tilt zoom camera with machine vision. And then transcription. My hypothesis was that different languages will require to be transcribed so that people from around the world can understand a dictum of English, maybe Welsh or Scottish. So, I looked into transcription and then translation, because to solve the problem of selling university lectures globally. So that was the start of machine learning as an entrepreneur. I tried to hire my friends. So I had to solve the problem as a, entrepreneur, product head. And that's how, to some extent, I stuck with analytics and machine learning. Then I moved to a tech company. It was a professional services vertical of that company doing marketing data science consulting. So custom analytics, marketing data science. So data science led a few years there, then moved into one of the big fours in forensic data analytics. So that's investigating, big corruption or big enterprise corruption or bribery cases with the lens of data science, and spent some time there. Then moved into another big four as a data science AI product owner. So I launched 1-2 products there and then consulted on the use of AI. Now full circle, all of those were, I would say, analytical or, not as smart AI as now. But now, I've been in this current role for past 6 years, which I started as, focus on cyber data science, and then pivoted into, or at least expanded to, the topic of technology risk management of AI and data science. So that's the current focus, but it's very much, the initial juncture was use machine learning for, recording university lectures with automated cameras and transcription. So, people around the world can take courses.
So was your background ahead of that? Are you a technologist at heart? Like, were you coming from a technology background through academics?
Electrical engineering, electronics, but the only, or at least the main overlap with machine learning is around communication systems, and there is a body of electrical engineering which focuses on machine learning, speech recognition, speech processing, digital processing used a lot in trading. So that's one, and then chip design. So ASIC chips, so chips which are like GPUs, but they're specific for application type. But it wasn't machine learning. The area of machine learning AI is because I had to start, I started another company, which was like Deliveroo. So I did one company called WeOrder, which was a taxi and food ordering service from my university. Both of them, I didn't move with the correct speed and direction. But that was all, the product was the reason I got into ML, not because I was a ML engineer or, studying ML in uni.
Yeah.
And of course, the market became at some point important and hot. Then that's when I realized that what I was doing then is actually important. And then I tried to, double down on this area. So that's the journey.
Yeah. And in terms of the current iteration, I know you mentioned so you're currently in the sales side, focused around technology risk within AI. So what does that mean in reality? Well, I'll let you answer the question. Yeah. So can you frame that?
Yes, so it's sell side and actually broader. So other subsectors of finance, retail, banking, then wealth, asset management. So it's a bit broader from the just sell side, buy side sort of focus. It's quite simple. It's the financial sector across retail banking to sell side, buy side has AI based ambitions on updating the IT infrastructure. As you say, maybe also the type of applications that would be built in the future and currently. So my perspective or my role is focused on the application review. So essentially assessing the scope of the business objective of the adoption of AI. So it can be, if it's let's say if it's an investment research tool in which we are using, in which somebody is using, let's say, new modern LLMs. So it's the scope, whether this technology is applicable. So the technical due diligence, and then the application or the business due diligence. So that boils down into assessing initially the project risk. And project risk for AI could be lack of data, lack of sufficient data, good processes in AI model development, then model deployment, quality of the response. So I would look into that entire scope. And then the things which we don't see, the infrastructure. So if you're talking about newer powerful model, it would require much more powerful GPU infrastructure. In the past it was CPU. So looking into the infrastructure setup that will support this applications. And then if you think about the various subsectors, retail banking can have biometric authentication, or it can have sort of chatbot on retail banking applications. So those are quite different application area. So I would focus on the application type and then the infrastructure that supports it.
So the breadth is fairly complex then, in terms of like everything that's in scope.
Yes, it is. It is complex specifically on the modality of the use of AI techniques. So if you talk about a particular application, it could mix up, processing language data. It can mix up, structured data processing. So it's essentially a combinatorial effect of different approaches. And then there is there is essentially the foresight, which is how this technology may go wrong in operations. So if you're talking about, let's say, a few years back, there is a US real estate firm. So they're like Zoopla in UK. So they help on buying and selling of real estate. They got into the business of buying real estate houses, and they were forecasting the price of the houses. They're underwriting that loan, and they were doing many of those. Because of COVID, they were forecasting higher prices and paying out higher prices. When they were offloading those assets, the delta between what they were paying and what they could get on the market was huge. So here there was a failure of AI governance, right, where they didn't understand that the underlying data of the marketplace has changed. It's essentially the buying capacity of people has decreased. So that will differ from, let's say, a use case which is used by, for customer service use case, where customers are calling in to say that I need to update my, account details. So it's quite different. But if you look into some of the commonality, there is essentially a process around AI application development. And that is quite, it's like software development lifecycle. AI application development lifecycle is quite, there are a lot of commonalities. But it's vast because the application type can change. So I have to forecast that what could go wrong on the real estate example and what could go wrong on a chatbot example. They would be very different because we are talking about technology in context. So that's the veracity. And then, of course, there are many types of technologies. Some are new, some are old, some are legacy. So when we put the entire ecosystem into play, it's both, there is a change part and then the old part. So that makes it contrived.
I want to really kind of hone in on AI specifically. I think it's massively in vogue at the moment, and certainly within technology communities, there's a lot of opinions and there's potentially differing opinions on a lot of counts. But just before we do that, to bring it back to you slightly, you mentioned at the beginning of sort of your evolution, entrepreneurial at the beginning and a couple of different companies and that sort of thing. Do you have, like, to a layman, it doesn't seem to be a natural fit of technology governance and risk at a global level with a natural entrepreneur. Do you find the outlets within your work that you need to, like, can you harness your entrepreneurial spirit within the because you've been there 6 years, right? So there's obviously you're getting stuff from it.
Yes, it's actually very important to invert the problem here. So when we're talking about technology risk management, we are talking about value creation and preservation. So when we talk about governance, it's, we can think about AI technology inclusion into different operating processes as assets. So it can be technology assets, and also, we are talking about agents. It can be quasi-technology and human augmentation assets. So when we think about that, the interesting part from our entrepreneurial mindset is there is a lot of new things going on technology, and being able to, be close to this innovation. That's one. The other one is the ability to, approach each and every adoption, proposition from the commercialization perspective. Does it make sense? And then if the technologies that will be used are the best for the purpose, and then thinking about what could go wrong if they are not used appropriately. So that's one, which is a combination of product mindset, and you're also talking about commercial impact of those use cases, or you may say projects. So that's one. And then the other one is, I would say, the ability to think about the systems, which are, a lot of the projects or use cases have common themes. So some of it could be essentially common capabilities. So when you're talking from entrepreneurial perspective, the approach is to think what are common denominators that needs to be built. So if there are repeats, so that's where you can say that these are, essentially repeats. So let's focus on what are things that can be shared services. And I think that's, again, interesting when you look into the problem from product mindset, and then the commercialization, and then the cost basis, which is, it can be infrastructure, can be models, can be, developers, can be applications, which are sub-applications. But yeah, it's also quite rich, because we're talking about AI from a risk standpoint. It's actually, when we have AI adoption, we have a proxy, which is the risk, and it's an entire industry. So if you have deepfake, you have deepfake detection. If you have AI models going RE, you have model monitoring. If you have data security risk, you have data. So there is a proxy ecosystem of technologies that come up from the adoption of AI to make it right. So again, from an entrepreneurial perspective, it gives it's quite
You're
interesting.
being satiated.
Yes, it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Depends, not every time, because sometimes you have to give bad news to a person or someone who is the proponent of this use case or this adoption. But then it's also, it's like devil's advocate.
So what are some of the key, to try and start, I guess, at a high level, because, I'm sitting here listening to you very much as a layman as well. So from your perspective currently, looking at your worldview, what are the key problems that you're trying to solve for over the next, 1, 2, 3 years that are going to be the value creators?
Yes. So I think the technology, AI technology, has a inherent deficiency, which is it's completely based on statistics. It's a probabilistic approach. So where we don't know, it's not definite. So then that reflects on hallucinations. We use the word, which is, quite often we see, and we've seen bad news about things like that. You'll see that a lot in, the repeatability. Something which becomes a product usually should have the same input output. Output should be almost similar. So once you have veracity there, it's uncertain, which is actually, human beings can be uncertain, but the technology is also, real reflection. So then when we talk about the probabilistic part, where uncertain technology, the key focus is to be able to make it as much certain as possible. So can be, it can be machine vision, it can be trading systems, it can be research, capital market research, it can be, customer verification, it can be, customer KYC. So different areas that uncertainty stays. And the objective of the entire process is to reduce that uncertainty through either tools which will detect some movement from what is expected, through to, essentially testing different scenarios. So that's one. The other one is the cost. AI technology is expensive still. It's expensive in comparison to IT. And it's when I say IT as in low tech, or if I say AI is high tech in comparison to IT, because the substrate of AI is expensive, so which is essentially GPUs and electricity, so it's expensive. So that means the ROI barrier is high in a way. So we are talking about ROI, which is sometimes high because the cost basis is higher, and then the ways it is used are new. So the technology can be, we hear about agentic systems, which even I'm trying to get my head around. We talk about, multimodal AI systems, which is fusing textual data, vision data, so on and so forth. So those can lead to new use cases. But then the ROI, the investment, the cost to income has to manifest in whatever beautiful technology we're using for a beautiful area, but that has to be underwritten. So that's again a view which is important, the ROI. And hence, to calculate the ROI, the entire supply chain has to be factored in, which means hardware/GPUs, cloud infrastructure, on-premise infrastructure, networking, data preparation, data security. So all those goes to the bill of materials. So that's one part. And then the third one is essentially, I would say, to be able to change the adoption of the technology in the processes, because processes are run by people, and the technology has to be, or should empower them. And if it is not included well, then it will not empower them, it may cause more issues. So that is the operational view, which is if you're talking about customer onboarding, if in the past it was done with humans and now it is augmented with a system, how do one, factor that in? So that's another area where I think a lot of due diligence has to be done from my role. And being able to understand the scope, and then how, working backwards, how does the technology have the handshake with the the user or the client base.
You mentioned the conceptually, like the whole supply chain needs to be evaluated and needs to be considered now. If we hone in a little bit on the human side of that supply chain, currently we have large institutions and small institutions that are staffed with, this is our software team, our infrastructure team, our network team, our platform team, and variations of analysts, engineers, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think is the near term in terms of impact on those individuals? From a perspective of, does this new capability to augment mean you need the same volumes of people because now they can all do so much more and we can create all of this new value? Or does it mean that actually we can now look to strategically reduce headcount and we can do more with less? And then for those people, we can essentially evolve them into having new skill sets. What are some of the pros and cons from a human perspective of the technology integration?
Yeah. So if we look into the current, there are many, AI is umbrella term for a lot of approaches to AI, essentially techniques. So one can be vision-based, video, audio, so on and so forth. There's lots of avenues. If we narrow down to, let's say, just one area, which is language-based, and programming, software development, which is, we are talking about a tech IT context, is an area where this technology is quite applicable, and the uncertainty of the output is much less than free from text. So if you ask an AI to write an essay, we would see more variations than if we ask it to write, let's say, AI system to create some web interface. So there is definitely more consistency on the output, but still we are talking about the entire orchestration of the tasks that a developer or a UI designer or a backend engineer would do gets compressed. Some of them, the way they do it changes, but still they have to do the orchestration. And there are some tools that also does the orchestration, but then I think the task composition changes. Some of them changes a lot, maybe 10x reduction in time, but that reduction of time distributes the task in some areas, which can be checking the output or designing differently or more engagement or different sort of engagement with collaborators. So net, I would say maybe 60-70% of the tasks that the developers do, some tasks will change, but I think they would be able to do different tasks in the time they unlock. So yes, there would be some changes on how teams are organized. I don't think that it's not. So this is not vaporizing talent pool. It is essentially augmenting, and there is an evolution of how design happens of IT solutions. And then if you're talking about other areas, as I mentioned, the programming is quite, the syntax is quite defined, hence it's correct. But if you're talking about just language, it does change, it does change a lot on the output of that scope. So it's most services that are done in the past using AI, without AI, will be augmented, and the skill set will change. But I don't see, complete change of most roles. Some roles will change, of course. It has happened. If you look into horse carriages and cars, of course, that has happened. But I think it's evolution in many cases.
I was discussing this actually with someone the other day, and we were talking about the concept of people manually farming fields, and then someone drove past in a tractor for the first time, and looking back, what that enabled was a number of those people to start thinking about different problems, and the emergence of science and art and culture, and an evolution out of, I guess, what was a feudal system essentially. So it's interesting to see, with that in mind, what could become in tech worlds, particularly around how much complexity there is within financial services these days, the retail side of the business, the wealth side of the business, the trading side of the business, etc. What is coming down the line that we don't yet conceive or have properly formed opinions on? But I guess the near term is, yes, not everyone's going to be vaporized, but naturally there's going to be like a lag of time where what happens in the gap between these new use cases that people can develop, but then also now we need 60% of the technology talent that we used to need because we can augment it so much with AI or with models with advanced technology capability. So I think that's the kind of the concerning point. Certainly for someone like myself who's a bit more of a layman and is not so deep into tech, in understanding like what does it mean for, I guess, like the human implications in the shorter term for people that are now going to be competing in theory for like a lot less jobs.
I think that's true. It could also lead to abundance, which is we may have, now if we talk about a lot of organizations, they buy software from specialized software vendors because the unit economics for the software vendor is better when they amortize across many customer base. But if you're talking about a first party, the buyer here, it can be a banking organization, it can be healthcare, if they have the skill set to use tools to build the application. So the time output moves from a vendor to in-house. So it's maybe the amortization of the cost changes. So it's tool and people has to be skilled. So this technology doesn't work, just like that. You have to have some sort of knowledge to interact, and that's improving. But still, even if the output is correct, somebody has to think about directionally where we are going. And the AI system can help, but still there is this need for internal people who are skilled. So maybe the hiring part which you're talking about, Craig, is now one would look for people who are able to use this technology and they have evidence and they have faced, they have got both success and they have they have not only got survival, they have also failure. They know where it doesn't work. And that will change based on the evolution of the technology. So today we are talking about models, so on and so forth, different tools that are used for that. But tomorrow it may be completely different. So somebody has to learn that, that tooling. So I think it will be, of course, the net amalgamation we can't foresee. But I would say that there is, even if you take the current view, the technology may not work at all. And to resolve the issues, it will take more time. And if it does work for IT context, it will lead to people spending time different. They will do more user service. They will essentially spend more time on maybe optimizing the system. They would, there's so much backlog. If you go around and sample, anyone from the street and ask them, have they finished all they are supposed to do? They will say they have backlogs.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination of both, some things going away and some new things coming into play.
I have an assumption that the technology is going to become more and more aligned to being a source of revenue generation for organizations in a sense of it's going to be so deeply ingrained in everything that a key parameter of your success or failure is going to be the capability of your technology. In the way that, say, if we take trading, for example, the way that companies trade, their strategies, their investment, et cetera, is very, very proprietary. And does that denote like a future where are say banks, for example, going to become very protectionist around their specific versions of how they integrate this tech? Like, is that possible, or is it all fairly kind of generic from a technology perspective, and then it's more just the right people to understand how to orchestrate and use it to add value?
Yes, I think the what is going to be same many places. The how that is done is the difference. So even when we talk about the technology value chain, some companies are able to use technology better than others, even if Linux or basic tooling platform is known to everyone. Some companies have arranged the talent pool to be able to orchestrate the value in a much better way. So when we talk about institutions which are now, they know there's actually the IP, a lot of it is around the use of technology for operations. Whatever operation it is, it could be buy, sell of equities, could be essentially executing best execution. It can be, analyzing market depth, so on and so forth. So that's a process that is embedded. How that is done, that is changing, and maybe the speed, the cost to do that will change. Maybe traders tomorrow will say, well, I don't need a developer to design the user interface. I have a tool and a developer who is able to orchestrate few tools to design a user interface that I can think of. So that will change. But I think the what will be almost similar for a lot of companies. They would use maybe the well-known AI-assisted programming tool. They will have some minutiae on their internal tools they've designed based on that. So I was looking into a trading firm who is designing AI-assisted, they call it AI-assisted tools for the traders. And what they are doing is they are using proprietary technology, programming language. That's because they use that. They use OCaml, I think. So for that, the proprietary is on the language. So here is this programming language, but the tools they are using is more or less in line with other competitors are using. And I think they are a successful firm because they do the process they operate in. They are able to, if they're market making, they are good market makers. If they get data from multiple venues, they do it well. If they are analyzing alternative or external data, they have a good procurement strategy and good way to understand which data is valuable. So that would be still kept secret. But what tools they use may be available for many firms. So, and they may not use it well, and they may not see the same success as the others. Hence, the question about is technology a cost center? I think we are not talking about IT anymore, information technology. We are talking about intelligent technology. So where the here information is more possible to lead to action. In the past, it was mainly lookup of data or changing of data. But with new agents, we are talking about decisions as well, which is a bit different to in IT, which was mostly cost view. But if you're talking about decisions, it's actually not. Decisions create the impact.
Yeah.
So maybe there should be a focus on the value creation part and the value equation of technology.
With the how, so you mentioned like that's going to be the critical point or the differentiator between how successful different organizations are is talent understanding how to get the most out of the tech. Does that have an impact on how transient someone can be between companies? So naturally, like if you think about non-competes, for example, in the hedge fund world at the moment, non-competes are getting very long in some cases, and in some cases they're being badged up fully as a notice period, so they're very uncontestable. So there's been some examples recently of people being given 2-year notice periods or 3-year notice periods were they to move from hedge fund to hedge fund. It's not really something that impacts technology in banking, but if you are tying intelligent technology and the how with value creation, and it's seen as value by the leadership of the organization, is that going to have an impact on the ability of people to move from, say, bank to bank, for example?
So when the perspective of technology, information technology here, AI information technology is clubbed with commercial. So there's a huge commercial closeness. So if you're talking about AI model developers from big tech companies, they are a key source of value creation in many in many situations. So in essence, in that case, I would say that it's not only the technology and the user of the technology that will have similar situation, but it's also, I think in a lot of other financial areas, there is not that much proprietary logic. So a lot of the supporting functions are sort of generic. So there are many things which are proprietary processes. So I see that you may not see the hedge fund sectors non-compete in other areas of finance unless it's so close. Somebody has invented a way of algorithmic extraction of information that is so correct that if you're doing capital market research, it can tell you not only what has happened but what may happen based on the combination of information. So if somebody is underwriting an investment, they can essentially have more confidence on the information that is being provided. So this area is now being called compound AI systems. So that's tooling of different AI substrates and tooling systems to provide an outcome that may be very valuable. And you may see somebody who's a developer or IT focused person knowing this only, and will be valuable for a competing firm. But in other cases, you may see somebody knows how to use AI assisted coding, like many other people has learned. So it's not differentiating.
The pace of the evolution seems to be speeding up and very, very fast. So how does a bank, for example, which is obviously like a really big organization, without typecasting too much, there's a perspective, particularly of investment banking, that they're slow to innovate or slower to innovate relative to the big tech industry, for example, hedge funds, etc. How do, so someone in your position, looking at operational risk or making sure that the integration is done the right way, are there dangers, given how fast it's progressing, that all the work that you will put in over, say, the next year as an organization in terms of trying to drive this stuff is just going to be out of date by the time that you've put it in? Is there a sense of we can just maybe sit back for 2 years and kind of see how it evolves and then just pick the best versions of everything?
I think the latter one is riskier because it's not the risk of omission is bigger than the risk of commission, because this technology is, like any technology, is empirical. So you have to do it to know, what works and doesn't work. Of course, we can see from case studies and, you can get talent who knows what worked to tell you what worked. But there is big importance on what are the causes of failure. And that should be part of the budget. It's, there's Capital One. Long back, I was reading in the data monetization domain, which was, a lot in the data science context. They systematically invested money on, bad credit profiles to get the data where they see failures. Otherwise, they can't design a system to identify successes. So similarly, for IT or technology adoption, there has to be this, there has to be a portion of failures, and of course, successes. If you only believe on survival essentially things that survive or are successful are going to provide leading indicators. I don't think that's correct. It has to be also failures. So waiting, I don't think is right.
Yeah. Will larger organizations have to slightly alter their structures in order to iterate faster?
Yes, that starts from mundane tooling through to knowledge sharing, education, art of the possible. It has to be. It's like a game. I presume you say football, rugby. It's how you organize can completely change how if you win a game or not. I used to play cricket, so where you keep your your fielders determines will you get a catch. I used to play football. If I'm moving from, let's say I used to be forward to midfield, I would change, how I run. So if you don't do that based on the situation, you're stuck. So your output will be, we can't have a different outcome by solving the problem in the same way, and we have to restructure. So I think restructure means just to make it real, AI assisted programming, and coming to that domain, is letting people to design user interface quickly. Right? So you can have best designs. You can see, can you design something like Spotify, which is not heard about in enterprise tech usually. Something which is, good themes, so on and so forth. You can quickly test with your user population if they like it. If they like it, you double down on it. And this liking may not, create a consumer product. It may enable your employees to do their job function better. So if you go through the cycle of, 5 days of PRD product, development document, 3 days of UI, UX, the churn here is much faster. So you can, try something, scrap it, try something. For that, you need to have the tool. You need to know how to use it, and then you need to be able to orchestrate the feedback. Does it work or not? So I think that must change.
Yeah. So like layers in terms of like sign-off approvals and things like that are going to probably have to shrink down a bit. Like structurally, companies, not necessarily in terms of headcount, but in terms of how those team members operate, are going to have to become a little bit leaner.
Yeah.
The technology groups need to be closer to the revenue generation or the user base, in order to understand like what are the problems that we're actually trying to solve, and then build stuff. So we're sort of seeing this play out already a little bit with the rise of, I guess, like the distinguished engineer or the staff engineer, but someone that maybe historically would be pushed into a management role that is of the right seniority, but they're actually staying very hands-on and having maybe more scope. But I guess that will be a big challenge for larger organizations to be competitive, because naturally, if you're coming from, hundreds of thousands of people, and then all of the hierarchical structures that you need to have in order to run those organizations, leaning down is not an easy process to follow. So then in theory, you'd think that they're going to get smaller, inevitably.
Yes, and I think you speak a lot about individual contributor in the tech leadership, and I think that's because this technology is so new. To know how to use it, everyone should become a bit of an IC.
Yeah, we see this already. Like, there's a very high percentage of leaders in larger organizations that contact me talking about, I want to move back towards, not necessarily like give up all the leadership, but I want to get closer to the detail and be more of a player manager rather than a manager. Or just be around the code more. Because for me, like, I'm very vocal about this on LinkedIn, but I think the age of like the IC, the really capable IC is coming, and then that's being replicated now in comp, where what some engineers are earning these days relative to what they were earning maybe 10 years ago is just crazy. But it comes with a concept of like, well, they're actually genuinely adding so much value, and that's come from having less partition between where the fire is over here, where the users are, and then the engineering team over here. The challenge for a lot of people is they've gone too far down the road of being away from the tech. So the question is, like, how can you get back? And for smaller firms, particularly hedge funds, for example, they are naturally always looking to promote from within into those sort of roles rather than bring in, because there's a concept of like the mindset shift needed to get back to it. So it's very difficult for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are really struggling to make the shift back at the moment. And there's a worry, I think, in some people where they're like, have I missed the boat a little bit? And have I moved too far away into sort of essentially being an administrative manager? So there's a lot of really interesting shifts happening at the moment. And obviously I see it from more of a people perspective. And I guess more like just high level trends. But that concept of like, the other thing we see is the more junior to mid-level engineer that's grown up in an environment where the tooling and everything is there. And it's all about just application versus perhaps your 15 plus year developer in a bank who's only ever specialized in one thing. And the latter now are like really struggling to get traction in the job market, whereas those that have less experience on paper actually have more experience within this sort of more modern style of working. So there's a bit of it's like a bit of a dual economy at the moment in from a talent acquisition perspective, and just prospects that people have that, you know, largely is not necessarily within their control. We've sort of segued into talent acquisition. So to bring it into that a little bit, when you think about, I guess, hiring and trying to grow your own teams and that sort of thing, like, what are some of the key kind of tenets that you look for? Like, what do you think good technologists, whether they're engineers or just people in the tech ecosystem in general, like, what are some of the traits and skills that they need to be bringing to the table to really compete and to be, you know, great talent in the kind of the modern age of technology application?
I think the speed of learning is a very important. Curiosity is important, which is, I think, close correlation with speed of learning. And you know, some people learn quicker, but curiosity is usually there, and speed of learning will differ. It can be innate and, you know, acquired. So those are two things. And then seeing those in reflection in experience. It can be CV, it can be some things they've built or some things they have, new things they have learned. So seeing those, you know, footprints of curiosity. It can be, you know, topics they can talk about, and they have a thesis about where the world is going. So there are probably different ways to understand that. I would say that there are many things which are also from the past that are relevant. So if you're talking about data science, AI topic, you know, statistical topics now, or statistical software development, which is used a lot in trading as well, or, you know, in finance, can be now done using AI-assisted tools. Essentially, it's same, developing a software, you know. Also, it has learned a lot of statistical knowledge. It can help you, but then there has to be someone who tests, tries, and checks it. So if you're talking about augmented tech hire for data science, AI, you are talking about a more broader skill set. So you're talking about knowledge about, you know, reliability engineering. Maybe they don't need to know it, but they need to have a perspective that there has to be a way to control the, you know, the version of models, the retraining of models. Then somebody you are hiring for, let's say, talking about, you know, metrics which are reliability metrics. They need to know some statistical knowledge along with which coding tools can help them. The entire space is quite new. So when we are talking about the AI tooling, I think, you know, Microsoft Copilot was 3 years back. I didn't pay so much attention. Then there has been huge progress, and the progress is because the models have gotten better, and the tooling are able to use the models in a way that does multiple functions, and this is changing as we speak. So I don't expect anyone to know fully unless they are building those tools, and still there will be deficiency. So it's the market knowledge, and then knowing also the base, some of the base common denominators, which help you to check if the AI system is correct or not. And of course, you know, common sense. We need to check for common sense on using these tools.
Yeah. I know we run out of time, and appreciate you're a very busy man. What do you think, just high level, like if you fast forward now like 2 or 3 years and you think about your role within the organization and some of the key things that you need to be delivering on, like what does a successful next 2 or 3 years look like for you in terms of like, how will the organization look?
Yeah, some of it I have no idea. I have the idea on what areas of technology use that are interesting, and I see those are valuable. So I was, we mentioned about the perspective about the cost of AI technology that has to go down, and the reliability has to go up, and that will determine how many use cases and places it will be adopted. So it's similar to electricity. More, we have now LEDs and so on and so forth, different places of electricity outlet, and we have more lights. But the thing is, we have to make this technology more reliable, and it will not be probably solved by making models better. It would be essentially putting controls and tooling. So for electricity, we have duct tape or some sort of protection to stop people getting electric shock. Similarly, for AI, we need to have a way to stop people believing in confabulation or hallucination or wrong output. So that's one which is I see. Then the cost equation, which is the hardware. So we talk about few providers, often in media, NVIDIA, so on and so forth. They are innovating based on what people need, and there's huge changes. Their growth is changing. So their compute and their networking is changing every 6 months. So that changes how and what type of applications will be developed. So again, looking into the entire ecosystem, and then there are the functions which are either you have autonomous AI systems. How those applications are designed are very different from when I was I got started, very different. So that would lead to new tools, new mistakes. So being able to understand those. So that's what I have idea about. No idea is, I don't know where it will be used and how the adoption would be.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be an interesting few years, I think, for everyone that's in the industry, whether they're technologists, finance professionals, recruiters within this ecosystem, whatever it might be. But it seems like a topic that can just be, it's so opinion oriented at the moment, and then it's naturally only going to become denser and evolve, faster and further. So I would imagine that we may have to do another one and get into it again. But look, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been great to get a window into just how it looks like from your kind of worldview and the adoption of the tech and some of the key things that you need to think about in order to do that. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you for having me.
No problem at all.